Aloha, everybody! Welcome to Spilling the Tea podcast.
Episode 2.
I'm Helen.
I'm Kiki, and we're so excited because we're having our very first guest. We're having our very first guest, and it's none other than Marcel! Welcome! How are you? Can I give you a hug?
Yes, of course.
Hi!
Thanks for having me, guys. I feel so honored.
Of
You guys are
course!
inspirational, and I love
Thank
to be
you. I can't believe you're here. I feel
I did
like, Helen and I have been talking about this podcast for quite a minute now, and we're just so
Good.
excited to, finally launch it. But
Marcel, you
really to
wanna
have you
go on?
here.
Yeah.
I feel really honored to be here, seriously, to be the first guest ever. What you guys are doing, the mission that you guys are doing is so important to me. We
Yeah,
are doing.
we.
That's right.
There's 3 of us.
You're right.
Marcel,
Yes.
you volunteer at the cafe every single week. You are a
I
huge
do.
part of our operation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who are you? What are your pronouns?
Okay.
What's your connection to Spill the Tea?
What's your zodiac sign?
Okay, so those are a lot of deep questions. Okay, so like I'm an Aries. I know.
Ooh.
Yeah, intense. But that's okay. That's another story.
I love that.
My name is Marcel and he calls me Mahalo. I am 31 years old. I am originally from Brazil. I moved to the US about 7 years ago. And how did I hear about the Spill the Tea Cafe? It's because I was granted asylum in the US back in 2018 because of the change of the presidency down in Brazil, which means a lot of harm and dangers for people like me that identify as non-binary. My pronouns, by the way, are they, them, he, him, she, hers, whatever you feel like it. I really don't mind. But yeah, so the reason why I started volunteering for Spill the Tea, it's because I was volunteering at the Lavender Clinic that existed here in Hawaii, helping transgender people get access to healthcare, which was number one and the only one in the island, in the state of Hawaii. And so after the clinic shut down, I just really wanted to continue volunteering because it was really good for my mental health. I was able to be connected to you guys through the management and the team here in Hawaii. It's a very small island, so everybody kind of knows each other.
Yes.
Everybody was obsessed with Halen. They knew primarily Halen
Yeah.
at the Lavender Clinic. And I was lucky enough to be able to just start, making some boba, talking to the kids, and just being there for them.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about what Spill the Tea means to you, or when you go into the cafe, what your favorite part is?
Before we go there, just
okay.
really quickly,
Oh, yeah,
I want to
right.
acknowledge the
Yeah.
fact that, Lavender Clinic closed. I
Yeah.
think that is, we Spill the Tea. We don't want to get to that point, but I get why they had to close. Like
Yes.
there's lack of resources, there's lack of funding. There is just
Lack of understanding
yes,
of what
These-
this means.
yes,
Absolutely.
Especially in Hawaii being the state number one with the suicide ideation or suicide cases for transgender people. So I don't know if I share this already, but Brazil is number one killing transgender people in the world right now.
Wow.
It has
Murdering?
been number one murdering and just like violence, aggressive violence towards the LGBTQ community.
I've seen that on
And
the
that
trans,
comes-
the Trans Day of Remembrance. And
Yes.
there were so many people from Brazil. who
Yes, I
remembered.
had to not go last year
Yeah,
because
no,
2 years
I-
ago when I went there,
Yeah.
it is just too brutal to see how
yeah.
these people are being murdered. And one of the reasons why I do what I do today is just consciously remembering that that's a part of my life story. And if I consciously choose to make a difference, that is enough for me and for the people around me. So one of the reasons why I feel lucky to be with you guys.
We are
Thank
the
you.
lucky
No,
ones,
yeah, we
Marcel.
feel extremely lucky to have you in your team. You really do a lot for a clinic, and I will forever be extremely beyond appreciative
Yeah.
with you.
It is my pleasure, honestly. Seriously.
Marcel, you also have helped the kids learn like pressure points and some Chinese like medicine or holistic wellness. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, of course. So I decided to create my business called Rosa Wellness, rosa.wellness on Instagram if anybody wants to follow. It's pretty much one of the reasons why I wanted to continue living my life was to not just get access to quality mental health. Back in Brazil, when I didn't have that many resources, I was first introduced to mental health, ended up being taken to conversion therapy at one point because of my parents.
Oh,
And
you went to conversion
Wow.
therapy.
yes, it was not.
I didn't know that, Marcel.
I know.
How was
yeah,
that?
that was not a vibe. Let's just put it that
No.
way. It was just like really
Not a vibe.
Not a
Parents,
vibe.
if you guys
Fun.
are
Okay,
listening,
listen.
Yeah.
don't try to do
Everybody
this to your
knows
kid.
that the research is so clear. It is so
Yeah.
detrimental and contraindicated. So please,
Yeah, just
Wow.
really not. It's one of actually the main reasons that my asylum case was also so strong. On top of having the president changing in Brazil, having the fact that I was taking to therapy where the person was asking me to see, no, you should really invest on, just having sex with someone that is from the other gender because you never know if you never do
Wow.
that. Or
that's
like,
how conversion therapy is.
Historically, conversion therapy has been a lot worse. When I would tell people this, people would ask me, "Oh, so you were electrocuted? Like, or what were they doing to you?" I was like, "No, calm down. It's not like that. It's simply the fact of not actually letting the person figure themselves out and actually listen to exactly what they're saying and try to, guide them to one way or the other, even though the person knows where they want to be."
Right.
I started taking antidepressants, and they were trying to have me just now interact with girls and whatnot, and I started feeling suicidal. My parents didn't want to
Wow.
listen to me. And that's when I wanted to commit suicide for the first time after this whole entire, ball of things that I didn't know how to handle.
Would you mind me asking how old were you?
I think I was 18. Yeah, 18 when I started.
Wow.
I went through conversion therapy. So one of the things that I have a hard time talking to my parents about, or like even people back in Brazil about, because it's easy for them to deny my experience and the things that I had to go through.
And validate.
Yeah, and it's very traumatizing for even my family because I was just really going crazy and I was angry and I didn't know. I ended up realizing that my main problem or my main cause of suffering were my parents. It was a big deal for my community too because I was bullied my whole life, but also realizing that my parents, instead of having parents that were at least accepting and not as damaging as other people's parents, that was just not the case for me. I had bullying happening outside of the house, inside of the house, from everywhere. It was physical, it was mental, it was
Wow.
emotional. So in many levels, I ended up just like getting this type of abuse that nowadays we understand it's wrong and we're trying to stop it.
Absolutely.
But Brazil has a history of violence, and that is not as discussed as it should be. Just like mental health is not.
It's like a
So-
taboo.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
just the very strong stigma around it.
It is, and even though Brazil is a country that kills the majority of LGBTQ people in the world, we have the most well-known drag queen in the world. She's actually more popular than RuPaul
Oh my
herself.
gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
her name is Pablo Vittar, and she's a singer. She's a performer, and so we have a lot of support down there too. You have the extremes, so that's why Brazil sometimes doesn't make that much sense
Right.
because you're gonna see a lot of good things and horrible things happening in the same neighborhood. Maybe.
No, I really appreciate you sharing that. I mean, I know it's not easy to talk about, but it's to me amazing that, I didn't know all that, Marcel. And I think to see you thriving today and just beautiful and smiling, it's just such a possibility model. And it just gives me hope. And I can't imagine like what it gives the kids. So how did you overcome all that? How did you become like smiling like how you are today?
I honestly, even though we go through a lot of hard things and we start realizing that in therapy pretty much, I'm also very grateful for some of the coping skills and the, trying to take things as a joke sometimes and not taking it personal. My family has taught me a little bit about that by, bullying me so much. I was like, you know what? I just have to laugh about all of this because, there's no better coping mechanism sometimes than just like, going with the flow and not taking things too personal. Even though I had to address all of that growing up, a lot of things actually helped me overcome and actually be where I'm at. And I have to be thankful to mental health in general. And even though I was suffering, I've had a lot of, episodes where I was just really struggling to want to be alive. Suicidal ideation was a thing for me since I was a kid. And when I became an adult, it was just a pattern that I had to overcome because it would always come back to that same idea that I didn't want to be alive or that I wasn't good enough, that I just I didn't belong like everyone else, or I just didn't represent what correct was. And because I was reminded of that since I was a kid.
Right.
In many ways, yeah. But because I was able to get access to therapy, realize what was going on around me and especially inside of me, and when those things were not enough, I was introduced to some holistic practices while I was growing up. And that I was a teenager. While I grew up doing judo and martial arts because of my family, And I remember some of my uncles and aunties, they would teach me like, pressure point, acupressure points. They would teach me judo, karate, and some of these things that would all come together, like some Japanese and whatnot. And then when I became a teenager, I remember that I was doing therapy and I went to go get a Reiki session right after one of my therapy sessions. That's when I came out, and it was really difficult for me to talk about it. I was crying for 30 minutes. And then after every session, she would do some Reiki on me. And I remember the feeling of having these emotional wounds just soothing. It was a feeling that you look for. It's almost like you're looking for that feeling of feeling imbalanced your whole life. And all of a sudden, you're granted that opportunity to feel safe within yourself, and everything is fine. And you don't realize that because you are just going up and down, up and down, up and down. And when you feel that, you're like, okay, I should feel like this more often. I would like to feel like this more often.
Right.
And that's where I started just getting interest.
That was your breakthrough. That was like, okay, this is it. I'm done suffering. I'm done allowing bullying to get to me. I'm going to do something different.
I'm going to do something to change the narrative. And it was by realizing that therapy was helping me hold myself accountable for the life that I wanted to live. I use these other therapies like massage therapy or auricular therapy or Reiki and all of these things to help me bring balance within the self, and just kind of realize that even though I had emotional wounds to process, I could also nourish and cultivate other feelings about myself. And those are essential for me to find some type of grounding. Well, long story short, I kind of realized that I wanted to become a holistic therapist by the age of 18 and whatnot. When I moved to the US in 2016, I already had that goal in mind, but I had graduated animation design back then. I left Brazil just like kind of tired of the industry. I wanted to do something meaningful. And so I ended up coming to Hawaii because I had a little bit of my some family members living here. Great opportunity for me to go to school. And I decided to go for massage therapy first. And I really realized that it felt like I was not doing that for the first time in my life, I guess.
Like you were called for that.
Yeah, there was some type of calling. Maybe this is not my first life that I'm doing this. If you believe in reincarnation, But it felt very natural. It felt very comforting, and it felt very good to be reminded that I have the power to hold myself accountable for the way that I feel, and that I get to share that with other people too.
And honestly, it takes a lot of strength to be able to reach that mindset. You know? And it's amazing to think like how the work you do connects so well with mental health.
It does.
You know what I mean? I feel like, so for those that don't know, I get services from Marcel. 10 out of 10 would totally recommend.
Totally recommend.
Yeah. And I think that, my therapist is great. Shout out to Sam if you see this. But the work that I do with my therapist and the work that I do with you is really what allows me to just, show up as the person I am, try not to drown in my issues or problems. So it's beautiful how both things connect.
They do. One of the funny things about this practice, the reason why I created my business was to kind of try to make this full circle. But the more that I study these techniques, the more I realize that these specific sciences like traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda medicine, which is Indian that I'm tapping into as well, they have existed for thousands of years. All that I'm doing is translating that information to a way that can be used within the society that we have today. How can I make this so practical for someone that I don't have to teach them the whole entire concept behind it, because it might be too much, but I can actually bring a little bit of that into their lives. How can I tap in, give them a little bit of a resource? How can I teach them how to use these things on a daily basis or anytime, anywhere, just to try to give people tools to help them.
Like when people are spiraling, like you want to give them actual concrete tools to try to like regulate themselves or, calm down in a situation. I think a lot of our teams, go through that. But even for myself, right? Yeah. A lot of times when I'm working with Marcel or he's doing like cupping or shout out to my therapist and business coach, Billy. But I really believe that all of us need that guidance, right? Like we all need someone to be able to hold us accountable. And, that could be yourself. But for us, like in a new business, we do need that business coaching. We do need that therapy. But really, it's so hard. And there's a lot of times where I'm like crying and, I don't want to do what my business coach is telling me to do, or I have Kiki, you know, I don't want to let her down or let the team down.
I'm like, if you don't
And
do a podcast, and that's it. I'm walking out.
Throw in
And
a
then
podcast
I
in there.
come to Marcel and he's just like, it's okay, Helen, like you should just cry. Like you should, you know, like gives me that permission. And, you know, like being in a safe space. Again, I know for some people it might feel weird or awkward or like this is too woo-woo, but it really is a transformation for me. Like as soon as my kid came out, that was the beginning of my own transformation of really questioning the status quo and looking at everything that I've been taught. And, you know, people like you, Marcel, it just really opens my eyes to say like, hey, just because someone is different doesn't mean that they're a threat or they're scary or they're sinning, right? Like we all are human. And I think at the end of the day, I don't know if it's my menopause or like my midlife, but I feel like a rebirth of, you know, I am finally, I think, getting to know who I am and what I stand for and unlearning the things that maybe don't fit anymore, right? But holding on to the things that really resonate, that we're allowed to do that. And so I love what, you know, you're saying. As for the Tea Cafe, we say both and, right? We don't want to be black and white and say it's either, you know, holistic or like evidence-based, you know, CBT, like, yes, both and. So we can do all the evidence-based therapies and we know that this population is unique in their struggles. And so I acknowledge my privilege that I'm cisgendered and, you know, half white and, you know, now educated and things like that. But our kids, we need to learn from them. We need to, right? And so that's why we always really want the community to be involved because the goal for Spill the Tea is not for me to be the face forever, right? Yeah. We want this to grow into something where it takes on a brand of its own and that the kids or people of the community are leading, you know, eventually leading this. So it's super important that the visibility and the representation matters. But I just 100%. Wanted to mahalo you and then even the whole community for really allowing me to feel more free. I mean, I don't think if I had this experience that I would even have the courage to leave my job, right? My cushy, like whatever corporate 9-to-5 job. Yeah. And I think so many people are in that place right now where we're just like, yeah, this shit's not working anymore. Like the systems are broken. Like how can we rebuild?
Yeah. And well, at the end of the day, I feel very grateful that I was actually, I can see now that I had to go through so many lows that when I see people going through lows, it just really doesn't scare me anymore.
But you didn't deserve that. You know what I mean?
You never deserve that.
Yeah. I hope that you know that.
I do realize that a lot, but also it's what makes me who I am as well. Yeah. And I got to be grateful for those, you know, those experiences. Not that I got to, I am learning to be grateful for all of that. And I really see the difference that it's making in other people's lives nowadays, like yours, and, you know, the teens that I see every single week, just being able to see them come back, you know, and that I can give them a hug. That means the world to me because we know that sometimes it can be hard for them too.
Yeah, and going back to the time, you know, especially for teens that are watching, going back to the time where you were like unsafe with your parents, when you were constantly being bullied by them, the people that are supposed to be like your protectors, what are some words of encouragement that you would give or teens that are currently struggling with that and think that there's not going to be like the light at the end of the tunnel? Because I know that we get that a lot.
Yeah, it is tricky to really understand how self-love becomes really important, and there's some type of selfishness that has to come into place within understanding that your well-being and your sense of safety is a priority. So I do believe that learning to love yourself for who you are. I feel like I'm quoting RuPaul right now again. You know, like
I love her.
Yeah, we all love her. Yeah, but really just finding the space to communicate with yourself and go within and really realize what is it that you need at that very moment, and that, you know, like you shared, Helen, before, if you can get through that hard time, that hard moment, you do realize that that is temporary as well. Right. And that you can switch the narrative of the perspective of what you're going through, because there are many truths to just one fact that's happening, and you can really reshape your life being conscious of what's happening within you. So just self-love, and yeah, I think that's the main one for me.
Yes, I agree. No, 100%. And also I think that hopefully the teens can understand that the bullying that they receive, it's not because who they are as a person. It's really more a reflection of that person that's bullying you, if that makes sense.
100%. Today I can see it
it's
clearly.
Never your fault.
Yeah, very funny to move to the US and realize that a lot of things that are talked about or that I was made fun of about in that community, here they just have not been a thing for 10, 20 years. And it's almost like going back in time,
Wow.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's the easiest way that I could compare it. Like me talking about, I'm 31 years old and I had gay friends in San Diego that I would share about some of my life stories with them. They would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you went through that. That's not a thing here. It's not been a thing like for 10 to 15 years. And I was like, oh, my life was a shit show, you know? So you just kind of realize that you're like, well, I wasn't very lucky.
Yeah.
But
when you talk about that, it is a wake-up call for me. Like, while we are still really much more privileged, you know what I mean, in the US, even though we have so much discrimination and all of that, it's the opportunity to even create a Spill the Tea Cafe would not be possible in Brazil, right? So it's just, again, like a different perspective to take. And really, when you talk about the self-love, it takes practice, because we actually weren't taught that. Like, especially in Hawaii, the Asian culture is like very like familiar oriented, like sacrificial, like, you know, just and so when you think about self-love, it's really about that, like honoring yourself and understanding that you do have this, you know, whether it's your inner child or you are inherently worthy. And so a lot of times we talk about that, like, well, would you say that to your little sibling, or would you, you know, the way we criticize ourselves, would you actually say that to your actual daughter or son, you know, or child? And if you wouldn't, then you have to continue to practice. And I know it sounds weird, but you have to recognize when those patterns are coming where you're just like being so mean to yourself, right? Like Pamela. Oh,
Pamela.
Tell her
Oh my
Pamela.
gosh, yes,
Tell
girl.
her about
Okay,
Pamela.
Pamela is
Wait,
gonna
I
come
don't know
into the
about
room.
this.
Have you heard of this girl? She is not fun. Let's just put it that way. Sorry.
Wait, who
That
is
bitch
this?
Pamela.
Exactly. I didn't know if I could curse. Can I curse?
Yes, you can. It's a safe
Okay,
space.
girl. Okay,
Remember?
she is.
Did it,
Oh, okay.
so-
I already did on
thanks.
episode
Okay.
1.
Okay. Yeah, she's a bitch. So I was.
Who
No,
is
like,
this?
so
Marcel's innocent.
yes. So I
Oh.
was in therapy, like real hardcore, just to understand the dynamic of my family and blah blah blah. That was like 2 years ago, and I came up to realize that the source of my emotional wounds, they were always the same. The narrative was always the same. I was like, oh, I'm sad this week because of X, Y, and Z, and the next week would come around and like the same thing is happening. What is going on here? I'm so tired of suffering. What the hell is this? I don't like her. And then I was like, what is her name? Pamela. So sorry, Pamela.
There's always a Pamela.
We
Not a
love you,
Karen.
but-
There's a Pamela.
Yeah, girl. So like, yeah. That's how Pamela came into existence, because she's just a bitch in my head sometimes, and I get tired of it. So I do, you know, my mindfulness. I do my practices that help me remind that that's temporary, and that Pamela, I love you, girl. Like, I understand why you're here. I suffered a lot, so like
you're trying to protect me, Pamela. I get it.
Yes.
But sit the F down.
sit down. I need to go do
Yeah,
something
take a
else.
seat.
Yeah, take a seat.
I
girl.
like the
It's just
idea of like naming your inner critic, because it kind of separates you from like that thought pattern.
Yes.
What's your inner
Yeah.
critic's name?
I didn't name it yet.
Yeah, me neither.
We should totally make it a thing.
I'll have one by next episode.
Okay.
Please do. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Marcel, quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
How can we connect with you? Where can we find us?
Well, so you can always find me volunteering on Fridays at Spill the Tea Cafe.
3 to 7.
Yes,
Kakahako.
that's right. And I also go to the events. You can find me at the events. But I'm
He
also...
will be at
Our
our birthday.
Yes, I will. So
Find
excited
him
for
there
that.
March 10th, Sunday, 3 to 7.
Yes.
At Barn
Maybe
Salt.
your website and also your handle.
Yes, exactly. So if you go to my Instagram, rosa.wellness, you can be connected to my website, you know, traveling in-house calls and whatnot. And hopefully soon I'll have my own studio so I can offer massages for you guys at my studio.
But you already have your own studio on Sundays. No,
Exactly.
wait, Saturdays?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So yeah, just
Perfect.
getting that officialized.
Be there or be square.
Yes, so that's how you can find me. You can find my information on my website. So I'm looking forward to see how many people I can
Let's
reach.
cheers before we go.
Yes, please.
Okay, you
Let's do
guys.
that.
Cheers, not sponsored, but we could use some shmoney.
Just-
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Appreciate
oh my gosh,
it.
thank you guys. Thanks for letting me talk and share my life.
Love
With
you,
guys.
Marcel.
I love you.
I learned more about you today.
I know, me too.
Yes, there you go.
Thanks for sharing. It
Of
really
course.
means a lot.